How are you doing? How's everything going?
Hey Scott, how you doing? Nice to
I'm
see you
doing,
again.
I'm doing well. Where's your brother?
I'm here.
You can't see him?
I can't. I only see you in a beautiful red shirt.
Oh, Wayne,
I'm
good to
here.
see.
I can see Scott.
Hey,
He can
Wayne, there
see.
you are. How you doing?
He can see you. Well,
Hi,
he can,
Wayne.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. I just can't see you guys together. It's when I'm looking at one, I can't see the other, but that's okay.
okay.
Yeah, on my end either. I can't see. I usually see all three screens myself.
Right.
I don't know.
No problem.
Okay, so we have Scott Israel. He's on with the Adams Brothers podcast, and he's going to be running for Sheriff of Broward County in August. So, Scott, why don't you introduce yourself and tell the people about your law enforcement experience?
My pleasure. Adams Brothers, good day, and thank you for doing these podcasts. They're incredibly informative. My name is Scott Israel. I am the twice elected sheriff of Broward County. I've been in law enforcement for 40 years. I was first elected sheriff as a Democrat in 2012 and was reelected in 2016. One thing I'd like to bring out to the listening audience is we were reelected with almost 600,000 votes. And that was Broward County's way of saying when they reelect someone by the largest margin a sheriff has ever had, it's the citizens' way of saying, well done. We feel protected by BSO. We feel we were treated with dignity and respect. We feel kids were kept out of jail. We feel that Sheriff Israel, you've done the things that you promised to do. And we got reelected, and and we would have been still the sheriff. We're still going to get reelected in this August, but we would be the sitting sheriff right now. But because of what happened at Stoneman Douglas and me being a Democrat, not a Republican, I sit here today as the suspended sheriff.
Right.
And tell us a little bit about your career over the last 30 plus years.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. I started out as a patrolman with the Fort Lauderdale Police Department, and I rose to the rank of captain commander. What was unique and what I'm real proud of about the final years of my career at Fort Lauderdale is I was the SWAT commander and the community policing commander at the same time. So I understood operations and police tactics, but at the same time, it sent me on my road to being a sheriff by having incredible interaction with communities. And I think it culminated a few years back when I was on a radio show and Rick Party, the former radio host of Hot 105, now up in Atlanta, coined me the People's Sheriff. And to be called the People's Sheriff for all people means really, especially in this time, it really meant the world to me and still does. After retiring with 25 years with the Fort Lauderdale Police Department, I went on to be a police chief for 4 years in a city in Dade County called North Bay. And I just reinvented that city, brought them into the current stratosphere. And I ran for sheriff in 2008, and we lost by a small margin in 2008. And I didn't know what it was going to be for the Scott Israel and Susan Israel and our triplets. But I'm a man of God, and I listen to where God leads me. And God wanted us to run again, and we realized that doors are never closed to you. Man can't close doors on you. Only God can do that. And He didn't close that door. And we ran again in 2012, and we won. And we put together a really incredible team of people. And my goals were, as you know, to keep kids out of jail, to work in more of a humanistic way. And I was able to partner with Wayne Barton in delivering over now 5 million pounds of food to people that they never would have gotten otherwise. People have criticized me saying that's not the job of the police. And that's hogwash. To who power is given to, responsibility comes with. And God allowed me to be the sheriff of Broward County. I was going to use every aspect of my position to help people and to bring food in, and to have kids have breakfast. There's so many, when we think of, when we hear hunger, unfortunately we hear hunger, and we think of third world nations. But we don't realize there are so many people in America that are hungry and without, and go to food without eating. And that's what these grocery giveaways, we've done them from Deerfield to Hallandale, across to Miramar, up to Coral Springs. We've done them everywhere and I'm real proud of that. So I was a different type of sheriff, a sheriff of the people. And, for that very reason, I feel very confident that, God will bring us back into being the sheriff again in a few months. The civil citation program, it wasn't even utilized in Broward County till I became sheriff. And what the civil citation program basically says is, if you as a police officer anywhere in the state, and I want to be clear with the audience, this is not a Scott Israel program. It's nothing I created. I just used it like it's never been used before. But civil citation, Wayne, allows us to be able to arrest a child for a misdemeanor, but we don't. We put them into tried and tested programs, good programs, not slap on the wrist, programs where they're learning. And they learn things like alcohol, narcotics, anger management. We get them mental health help when they need that, which is so important. Nobody wants to follow President Obama's lead of sinking millions and millions and millions of dollars into the mental health industry. And that's a shame. That's a huge problem in our country. But because of the civil citation program and keeping kids out of jail, people like the representative in Deerfield Beach, where you're at, Gwendolyn Clark Reed, and other Democratic legislators in the state were able to go to Tallahassee, Republican-controlled Tallahassee, and get the program bumped from 1 civil citation to 3 civil citations. Now a child, there but for the grace of God, who's without mistake, so now a child could have 3 mistakes and given 3 civil citations and still not go to jail. Why is that important? For many reasons. When a child goes to jail, they can't get certain jobs. They can't go into the military. They can't go into, police work, or shouldn't be allowed into police work. Greg Tony, lied on his application, but he shouldn't be allowed to be in police work. But if you follow the rules and you do things the right way and you get arrested, there are certain reasons, certain things that will keep you out of police work. So we wanted to make sure we're not ruining a kid's life over misdemeanors. People have said to me, "Hey, Israel, Republicans, how many chances you want to give these kids?" Heck, I don't know. They're misdemeanors. I'll give them as many chances as they need to come back into, the framework of what we're trying to establish in Broward County. We were so successful that we were able to springboard the civil citation program into working with the school board in the Promise program. And ever since Stoneman Douglas, the Promise program, has been criticized by some. And anybody who would criticize it just doesn't know anything about it. The Promise program allows children to make mistakes in school, and not go to jail, not have the police come, to have, issue that it's handled in-house internally, whether it's extra schooling or they have to do a homework assignment or a report. But now we're through education, we're avoiding incarceration, and that's what I stand for.
Okay, I like that, and I agree that everybody that is arrested, you don't need to throw their lives away, and I believe that's a good program that you had intact there. And my question, which leads me to my second question: do you believe that there is systemic racism within BSO, and if it is, how will you address it?
I don't believe, I've been part of the agency for 6 years. I don't believe there's systemic racism within BSO. Do I believe there are people who are racist within the agency? Absolutely. But not systemic racism from top to bottom. I've never seen that. If it was there before me, I don't know that, but based on the men and women I brought with me and the way we conducted ourselves and the way we led by example, I have not seen systemic racism. A lot of times people say, well, we talk about police academies, and I know we're gonna be speaking on a lot of subjects today, and I look forward to speaking about that. But as far as racism goes, as a young white police officer in Fort Lauderdale, many, many, many years ago, more years than I'd like to admit, I went to homes of white people, whether it was on disturbances or whatever I went there for, and I would hear them speaking and how they would refer to African Americans or minorities. And when I'd leave there in a sad way, and I'd say, how are these children going to grow up and not be racist? And it's very disappointing. My family, my dad and mom, we subscribe to MLK's teachings that we judge everybody by the content of their character, by nothing else. And that's how we raised our family. And we're proud of the 3 children we raised. But I got to tell you, at the end of the day, what goes on in homes, we have to do better jobs in our families. We have to take charge of our families. We have to take charge of our homes. We have to raise our kids the right way and let them know these implicit bias, things like that, unacceptable, not allowed in our world.
Okay. Wayne?
If elected, what do you plan to accomplish in your first 30 to 90 days as sheriff?
Well, obviously, that's a great question. I want to bring back a lot of the things. We were very, very successful as the sheriff's office. Obviously, I'm going to have to meet with staff, the current staff there, interview staff. There's been rumors out there, so maybe you guys can quell them that I'm going to hire this person or fire this person, or I'm not bringing her back, or I am bringing him back, or that conversation has never occurred with me or anyone else. I've never talked about, right now, the goal, the mission is to win the election, and that's all we've talked about. Who this team will be has never, ever been discussed. I could tell you the team will, like my last team, will look exactly like the community looks. Will be representative of everyone, of LGBT, African Americans, Caribbean Americans, men, women, Hispanics, and on. So we will have a team of diversity. But as far as the team goes, if you good media people can make sure that rumor doesn't get out there or squashed, I'd appreciate it. Certainly, the one of the biggest disappointments that I have with Greg Toney, and I have many, but one of the biggest disappointments is that he fired everybody in a unit I created called the Community Outreach Unit. And he said community outreach is to be done by all police officers, and that he's not going to pay a unit to do it, that police should be doing it as part of their duty, and that all police officers, based on the salary they get, should be doing community policing. And he said he created a park and walk event, but as Al Pollack said on a forum last night, park and walk has been going on for 30, 40 years. This is just another way of him saying, relabeling something and saying he invented Coca-Cola with New Coke. So he's never done that. But here's what he's missing. Would you, Daryl, if you're a citizen anywhere in this country, would you want an officer, like former officer, now arrested for murder, Shaven, would you want him as a community policing officer? Is that who you would want getting out and park and walk? Not every officer is a cookie cutter of each. We're not all the same. Not everybody could do the same job. We all can't be canines. We all can't be narcotics detectives. And I'm telling you, we all cannot be community policing officers as a person who supervised community policing bureaus and divisions. So I created a community policing outreach unit. And I put people who grew up in certain neighborhoods, who came from certain neighborhoods, and I put them back in the neighborhoods from where they came, so they're interacting with people they know. There's familiarity there. Because, Daryl, You know, if you saw two young police officers come up to your home today to investigate, you called for police, and you saw one officer, no matter what he looked like, you saw one officer you had never seen before, and you saw another deputy that came from Dillard High School, grew up in Deerfield. There's that feeling of, wow, there's a trust there. There's, okay, he or she, they understand the community. So you want to put round plugs in round holes. So I will be bringing back the community policing outreach unit. It won't be the same people, but there will be people there that will be representing communities, because not everybody wants to talk to a cop with a badge and a gun. Sometimes we want to talk to a person with a pencil who's going to come in, sit in your house, have a cup of coffee, and the only thing they bring in is their heart and mind.
And I echo those same sentiments too. I thought the community outreach program was a good program that you installed. And I know here in Deerfield Beach, it was effective the whole time you was here, because it bridged that gap between law enforcement and the community. And I think a lot of crimes got solved that I didn't know of because of the connection between the community outreach. And I got one follow-up question, Scott, with that, what you were saying too about people fear of losing their jobs. What process will you use to give current sheriff office employees a chance to keep their jobs?
I will, another great question. Listening. The best leaders are the best listeners. I will interview, speak to. I know most of them. A lot of these people that Greg Tony put in positions, in fact, I think every one, I don't think he made a promotion to upper command staff where I didn't promote these men and women once, twice, or maybe even 3 times when I was the sheriff there. So I feel proud about some of these men and women being able to elevate to the positions they were. Now, bear in mind, they were only there because some men and women left with me. Others were fired by Greg Tony for being part of my command staff. So I don't believe that I should be saddled necessarily with everyone who's there. President Obama did not keep everybody that was turned over to him by President Bush, and Bush didn't keep the people that were turned over to him by Clinton. And a leader should have the right to build their own team, their own staff, but they have to be cognizant of the entire community when they do that. And there's a lot of great men and women over there. Greg Tony, the Republican, we all know he's a Republican appointee. He said that I brought people from Fort Lauderdale. I brought my friends over. First of all, the people that I brought from Fort Lauderdale were quality and qualified individuals. The reason they came from Fort Lauderdale and other places like Hollywood and Palm Beach County is I was not going to be saddled with a staff of people who looked like me that was left to me by Al Lamberti. I never worked with BSO before, so I wasn't familiar with BSO people and the men and women who were there. I wouldn't have known who to promote or who not to promote. I brought in a team that I was familiar with. Then as I got to meet and see the talent in BSO, I put people to the positions from which they came. There's no preconceived team here. Now I know BSO. Now I know these men and women professionally. I know how much talent is there. Is the team going to look exactly like it does now? I would say, probably not. But the team is going to be a team that the Broward County, Deerfield Beach, Pompano, Fort Lauderdale is proud of. You could count on that.
Okay, Daryl.
And speaking of men and women, you were a part of a candidate forum last evening, and it was said that out of 1,500 road patrol deputies, I believe it was, that only 230 are Black in all of Broward County, and that's shameful. And that needs to be addressed. I mean, that is, if those numbers are accurate, those numbers are shameful, and we're getting kind of tired of hearing that all the Black don't apply to these jobs. As for deputy sheriff, they don't apply. That's why we don't have a lot. to me, that's a poor excuse. 230 out of 1,500 deputies. So how do you respond to that?
Well, first of all, I don't know if the numbers, and you yourself said, Darrell, and I appreciate you saying if those numbers are accurate. I think we've learned over the last year that what Greg Tony says and what's actual are completely different things. He also said, he never did LSD when he had already admitted to doing LSD. So I'm not going to go by his data. So I appreciate you, having the integrity to say that we don't know if those numbers are accurate. Whether they're accurate or even close to being accurate, we need more. We need more deputies that look different. But here's what you need to take away. The takeaway is the African American deputy population was increased 12% while I was the sheriff of Broward County. No one has done more to hire minorities, promote minorities, and transfer minorities to good position than me. Period.
And while we're talking about deputies and being promoted and hired by BSO, there was one particular deputy that I know of, and I know her family. She applied for a job with BSO, and she was in the academy, and apparently she was told from the beginning that it would be hard on her throughout the academy and Stanetta Gibbons. And she was released from the academy, I believe 6 days before graduation. And how do you respond to that? To my knowledge, that happened while you were the sheriff of Broward County. And could you respond to that?
Yes, I have already talked to the family, the mother, the father, the brothers, sisters, and Stanetta herself. I'm well aware of this, and I can tell you this, can't predict the future, but Miss Gibbons will have every opportunity to flourish as a Broward Sheriff's deputy.
Well, that's good. That's all she needs is an opportunity. And if she passed every exam, as she stated, then she should be given a fair opportunity to compete for a job as a Broward County Sheriff deputy. And we'll keep an eye on it. Wayne?
I hope you do. We'll keep an eye on it together. This is something we all want.
Yeah, she comes from a great family. We know her mom and her dad personally, and they're very good people. And let me tell you, Scott, she would be a great asset to your organization and to this community to bridge the gap with the younger generation. She would definitely be an asset. I would hope at some point that she's blessed to get that job one day, and she has me on her side. I'm praying that she gets the job one day.
Wayne, could I just add something before you go on to your next question, please?
Yes.
They say that the best form of advertising in America is word of mouth. It's better than billboards. It's better. So coming from someone like you and that type of advertisement is really important. But I have something for you and Darrell to mull over when I get back in, and I thought we'd talk about it later, but now's the appropriate time. I'm going to take a lot of the hiring away from BSO police and civilians at HR, and we're going to create a hiring board that consists of men and women who live in Broward County, because we want to make sure that people who live in Broward County are saying, I want her as a police officer, I want him as a deputy sheriff. These are important things. So keep that thought, and when we get in, we're gonna talk more about this initiative of mine.
Okay. Okay. Do you need to go take care of your dog right quick, or you need?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So while he's taking care of his dog, little man back there, I recently requested, let me back up a little bit. Late last year, about 3 or 4 in the morning, I heard about 16 gunshots. And I called 911, like any normal citizen would do. And I reported the gunshots, and I let them know that the gunshots, weren't on my street. It was just north of me. And I requested to remain anonymous. And 3 to 4 minutes later, 6 or 7 carloads of deputies show up at my house after I had requested to be anonymous, remain anonymous, I should say. And I was ordered out of the house at gunpoint just for calling 911. And it was because of gunshots, shots being fired in my area. So my question to you is, if you're elected sheriff, will you be in favor of shot spotters? And if there's no money in the budget, will you make sure that that money is in the budget to have shot spotters installed?
I will. You know, I've said this many times before. You know, I've been criticized by some in the newspapers, and it's not the critic that counts. You know, it's the person who's in the arena. Face is marred by dust, sweat, and blood. But I have been criticized for asking for too much money from the county commission. And at the end of the day, I've always been, Darrell, I've always been fiscally responsible. And there's never been a scandal or money missing under my watch, nor will there ever be. But I think that, and this is a good opportunity on this podcast for me to get this point out to the listener. My job is not to save money. My job is to save lives. And sometimes if we need money to spend lives, like you say on ShotSpotter and things like that, all I could do is ask for it, but I don't print the money. But I certainly have always been there for the community and ask for things that keep us safe and secure.
Yeah, and the reason why I said make sure that to see if the money was in the budget, because I requested those personally in Deerfield Beach, and I was told that it probably won't happen because of funding. And like you said, if it can save lives, then there's no price on a human life. So I mean,
no price.
200,000, 300, or $500,000 or whatever, that's a small price to pay to save a life.
But we don't. Agreed. No, nothing you said I disagree with. But, and I know you do understand this, Darrell.
Absolutely.
I still need the money. We could be philosophically on the same page, but if the money's not given to us, we can't buy the product.
Agree. Wayne?
Okay, Scott, dude.
What breed of dog?
He's a Maltese.
Okay.
16, almost 17 years old.
Wow. God bless him.
Yeah.
I got a bull mastiff.
Yeah, he's I mean, if he hears my voice, he'll just go to barking. So, but would you agree, or how do you feel about taking, as you know, you've been hearing lately in the news about defunding the police and doing away with the police. I don't agree with doing away with the police, but I do agree, and the wording of the funding, I think it should be, you know, redistribute. Would you be willing to redistribute some of the money that is going towards BSO, towards mental illness or mental health or mental issues, or, you know, a lot of the money that's going, would you be willing to put a lot of it towards mental issues, mental health issues? And I noticed it had, even before it had been in the news a lot. And I was just wondering, how do you feel about redirecting money towards mental illness programs?
I'm very much for, Wayne, the important thing about your question is people have different definitions of defunding. So we need the same definition of defunding. Your definition and my definition, which will make me easy to answer this question, is exactly the same. If the money goes to community affairs issues, if it goes to homelessness, if it goes to mental health issues, if it goes to housing issues, these things, this money taking away from police departments are okay, because when you put money to people who are mentally ill, or put money to the homeless, or put money to people who need homes, and they get homes, housing issues, you're going to have less crime. So that's the community working together. So in that respect, I absolutely agree with refunding, you know, not defunding, just putting the funding to, maybe it doesn't have to be under my control or police chief's control. If it's going to viable issues that are helping lives, I'm all for it. But if we're saying that we're going to exist as a community without laws and without police officers, and there's going to be total anarchy and people could do this and do that with no fear of, you know, being arrested or incarcerated or prosecuted, I certainly don't agree with that.
Right, and that's why I wanted to articulate the wording, redistribute, you know, and I think that is not being articulated in the media, and redirecting, you know, the money to programs just like what you're talking about right now, as far as mental health, school issues, you know, something to do with the school programs. I have no problem in that.
You know, let me add to that, to show you how philosophically in tune we are. The very first expenditure from my law enforcement trust fund as sheriff was almost $400,000 that was given to the county for their homeless assistance program, their homeless outreach program, that we were able to put a program together that when a deputy or a police officer anywhere in the county contacted a homeless individual, they would know what medication the person takes, who's the next of kin, who's the doctor. It was an information system. And to this day, the homeless community and those who work at the Hack over on Sunrise Boulevard on Fort Lauderdale, they say we can't thank you enough for what, you know, you've done to combat homelessness and to help out. And I got to tell you, I think one of the single most important things that I did when I came to the Broward Sheriff's offices, when I met with our training staff and I met with deputies, I made sure they knew that drug addicts, homeless people, alcoholics were not problem people, but we refer to them as people with very real problems, and they weren't criminals, and that we were going to take a compassionate approach, you know, and that's how we dealt with these individuals, and that's how we became the people's sheriff, and that's why we were reelected by such a wide margin, because we were able to do things like that. I don't know if you have time for a short story, but if you do,
go right ahead.
Very proud of this story. Many years ago, my triplets, I think, were in 11th grade, and I took my daughter with me to a meeting I had at the homeless shelter down on Sunrise Boulevard. Her name's Blair, and I was down at the meeting and waiting to go into a meeting, and I was walking Blair around the facility because she just, you know, she had a desire to help the homeless, and we were proud of her. So I exposed her to the homeless center. So I went into the meeting, and I was in for about a half hour. Blair was outside, and she was talking to men and women who lived at the facility who were homeless. And I came out, and you know, this impacted her forever. And I could see, you know, she was teary-eyed and she was upset. And I could see she didn't want to talk to me there. She wanted to talk to me in the car. So we got into the car and we were driving home, and I said, "What happened?" And she said she met a homeless man, and she said he was incredibly intelligent. He had graduated from some big school, 4-year degree, got his master's, and she said, you know, he was just so smart. And he went for a job that day, and he told my daughter he was overqualified for the job. And she said, "Well, why do you think you didn't get it?" And he pointed to his clothing and he goes, "Would you hire me if you were an employer? Look how I look." And she went home that day, talked with my wife, and within 2 weeks, she created the Blair Share Project, where she collected, I think last was about $400,000 worth of men's clothing to give to homeless men who could not only wear the clothes and keep the clothes, but go on job interviews and do things like that. The money, I've been at every NAMI walk. Our law enforcement trust fund supported NAMI to hundreds of thousands of dollars. Why do we do that? We want to help the community of people who are suffering from mental illness. Mental illness, it's no different to me than tearing your ACL. If you tear your ACL, you go to an orthopedic surgeon, he performs surgery, but that's not it. Then you have a year of rehabilitation. Why is it when we have a person who's mentally ill, we Baker Act them, they get out 2-3 days later, and we expect them to be right? They'll never be right. They have to go through a rehabilitation project. This costs money. President Obama had it right, and I support it completely. And that's why I've always given money to organizations that fund programs for the mentally ill.
Okay.
Do you think you were portrayed fairly in the media after the Parkland shooting?
Of course not. It was a sham. It was a scam. It was fraud. I went to work one day and I was considered a popular sheriff, a former SWAT commander. I understand more about police movements and techniques and flooding rooms and how to handle active killing situations than anybody that's ever been on your program. And I say that humbly. You know, I'm a humble man. I'm not prideful. And then to think that a mentally ill, evil killer walked into a school and shot 34 people, killing 17. And to say that there's something that me, you, or anybody but the wings of the Almighty could have done about that is just not fair. Active killings didn't begin before Parkland, and they haven't ended since then. Look what happened at the Pulse nightclub. It was hours before they went in. 50 some odd people died. At Las Vegas, 2 deputies didn't go in. These things happen. People don't realize that from a communication standpoint, the communications, this is incredibly important. The Broward Sheriff's Office was receiving information from Scott Peterson via his police radio. The Coral Springs Police Department was receiving information from the phones because it went right to their dispatch center. Coral Springs did not want to come on a regional system. So we weren't hearing what they were hearing. The public knows this. And at the end of the day, could you imagine, Wayne, if you and I got into let's say we wanted to play some one-on-one today at the schoolyard, and we said, Daryl's going to be the referee. Daryl will wear the black and white zebra shirt. You know, he's going to be a little partial to you. Well, when I went up to Tallahassee, the person who wore the zebra shirt was a Republican, a lifelong Republican special master. And he said, after months and months and months of investigations and depositions and trials and looking at everything they was looking to, he said, there's no systemic failure on the part of Sheriff Israel or BSO. There was some individual failures by a deputy or two. Put the sheriff back to work. And they never did. I know you're the interviewer, and this is your show, and I understand that, but you tell me, is there anybody listening that thinks Scott Israel was treated fairly?
I don't think you were treated fairly. I don't think that at all. And I think, and this is another question, if you were a Republican, I already know the answer. Do you think you would have been suspended at all?
I wouldn't have even been in Tallahassee. And let me ask you something again, because I hope this is more like a conversation and an interview, because we know each other a long time. So I like to get this interactive. So let me ask you this person.
Mm-hmm.
As an African-American man, do you feel if this killer destroyed the lives at a high school attended by mostly African-American students, do you believe we would be here right now?
No, I have said this many times before. If that had happened at Ely High or Dillard or one of the other predominantly black schools, they would have blamed the whole black community. They would have blamed single mothers. They would have blamed single parenting. They would have blamed everything that in their power within, before blaming the actual shooter. So I definitely understand where you're coming from.
If there were more Democrats in Tallahassee than Republicans, we wouldn't be here right now. And the only answer to this, The only thing we could do as a community, because we're all about coming together as a community, the only thing we can do left for us as a community is to come together and say, in the good name of Medgar Evers, who died trying to get African Americans the right to vote, your vote, my vote, everybody's vote in Broward County was stolen. It was stolen from us like you'd pickpocket a wallet. And we need to reclaim the vote, and we need to send a message to Tallahassee. We are Broward County. We elect our public officials. We are reclaiming our vote in August. We are re-electing Scott Israel. And when we want him out, we'll tell you, because we'll give more votes to the other people.
And I agree. And I echoed that to Sheriff Tony when he was on a local radio station, and I called in and I told him just that. I was like, I don't like the way that you were appointed sheriff. The people of Broward County didn't vote for you, and a lot of people it didn't sit well with the voters of Broward County, and your fate should have been left up to the people of Broward County. If we didn't want you, then we should have had the opportunity to vote you out. So,
amen.
Again, that we didn't think that was fair to you. It should have been left up to the voters. So on to my next question. What happened to George Floyd up in Minnesota was horrible. And I just can't say it enough. It makes me sick to my stomach just even thinking about it, looking at that video. It's hard for me to even look at. But his death is changing the world right now, right before our very eyes. So my question to you is, he was killed, murdered. He was murdered. He had a knee on his neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds. So that leads me to my question. What do you think about knees to the neck and chokeholds being used by deputies or police officers? And if any deputy, if you're reelected, if any deputy is caught using a chokehold or a knee to the neck, what would be the disciplinary action that you would take?
Well, I would fire them immediately and send the case and the video and all the evidence over to the state attorney's office for them to decide prosecution. The chokehold, the carotid artery, anything that prohibits a person from breathing has been eliminated from the Broward Sheriff's Office even before I got there. Tactically, it's never been taught in any agency I've ever worked at. Don't support it, would never support it. And I too was shaken to the core because as a lifelong police officer, I saw something I've never ever seen before. And if that didn't, wasn't gut wrenching and made me sick to my stomach, which it did, what about the part that if we've ever played on football teams before or baseball teams, and our teammates get in a fight with the other team, the first thing we do is run out and pull them apart. Where was the intervention? In Minneapolis, I do believe there was systemic racism there. I do believe that because the most gut-wrenching part of all, the most hurtful thing, other than Mr. Floyd dying, on television in front of your eyes, was the fact that this was not something these police officers were trying to hide. This was not a hidden camera that got them in a store or got them in a room and like a granny cam or a nanny cam, and they didn't know they were on it. They knew they were being filmed by everybody, and they thought this behavior was acceptable. This murderous, inhumane behavior was acceptable, and police brutality and systemic racism needs to be eradicated from our country forever.
Absolutely, and I agree with you 100%. And there's no room for any kind of racism in law enforcement, and we have to do better. We've come a long way, but we still have a long ways to go. And if we all work together, I'm sure we could fix it. Wayne?
Okay. In 2015, Deputy Peter Peraza became the first police officer in Broward County to be indicted by a grand jury for shooting someone in over 30 years. Scott, why do you think it is so hard here in Broward County, and I'm just speaking of Broward County, to convict a police officer after we have seen like so many things on video? Why is it so hard to convict a police officer here in Broward County and the state of Florida?
It's a very fair question, and I wish I could answer it, because if I could answer it, then I would try and do something to, and I'm not trying, as you know very well, Wayne, I'm in the executive branch of government. I'm not a lawmaker, and I'm certainly not a judge. If I was a lawmaker, I'd be making different type of laws, and if I was a judge, I'd be making different, decisions, although juries, select, but I don't know your answer. Once we arrest somebody or once we send a case over, it's in the hands of the state attorney. And this would be a much, much better question. I'm not being evasive. I don't try and get around any question. You know me better than that. But that's a better question for those who work at the state attorney's office.
Yeah, because, I just asked because I remember in 2015, Jermaine McBean was killed. And that case always haunted me because, and I remember you rightfully so, you fired him. Officer Pereza, and I just remember that case just stayed in my head. I remember just even seeing it on MSNBC. They were showing it, and I always wondered, I know the answer. I just wanted to hear your take on it, But also, if elected again, Scott, do you think you can work with Governor Ron DeSantis again? Do you think you all can work together?
Sure. I mean, when you say again, this may be a head scratcher to you and the listeners, but I have never met Ron DeSantis in my life, and I have never talked to him. I'm a 40-year veteran in law enforcement, a father of 3, a good husband, and a good person. And if you're going to suspend me, I never got my right to sit down with him and have the ability to explain. He never even wanted to talk to me. He was told 1 or 2 things by some parents in Parkland, and I was suspended. But I've played on football teams my whole life, and in college, and I know this: you don't have to break bread with somebody to work with them. Not everybody on the same team is going to get along. It's always easier when you do, and coaches strive for that camaraderie. The best teams, the winners of the Super Bowls, the winners of the World Series, they like spending time with each other. They like being together. So every leader, every dad wants his family unit, together, cohesive. And I'm no different. But there's a job to be done, and what the governor did to me will be pushed to the side. And when I need him, or I need to converse with him, or he needs me for the betterment of the citizens of Broward County, my personal opinions will be to the side, and I'll be all in, rolling up my sleeves, working as a professional to get things done for our community.
Right. And that's why I was asking that question, because I know if I was in your position, I would feel very awkward. And I understand you say you never met him, you never talked to him. So, and that's strange, you suspend someone that you never met or you never talked to, but you hire someone as the new sheriff that you say you never met or talked to.
Yeah. He never knew. I believe him. He never knew Greg Toney. He was given that name by a parent who lost a child, which is a tragic thing. But and my heart goes out to the parents in Parkland who lost children. But my heart goes out to every single parent in the country, in the world, that lost a child. No parent should ever have that. So that's devastating for everyone. How many children have been taken from us in African American communities throughout this country? How devastating has that been to these communities? But I've never heard of citizens going to a governor and saying, remove that police chief, remove that sheriff, remove that school board superintendent.
I mean, I don't personally remember no one ever being suspended after a mass shooting.
Never happened. You don't remember it. You don't remember it because it's never happened.
I know, and it was, what happened to you, I still say was a tragedy, because the people of Broward County spoke in, I think, 2012 or 2013, and unless the people spoke again, you should still be in office right now. And that's just my personal feeling. Even though I'm doing the interview, I still think that was a miscarriage of justice. And, you know, when I see a miscarriage, I don't care who it is, I'm gonna speak on it. Darryl, have you got anything else?
Well, I have another question. The people want, we like transparency. And a lot of people, you know, we thought that we weren't getting that, so they start giving the police officers body cams. And in some instances, the body cams weren't being turned on, or when they were turned on, they would be turned off. So my question to you, what would be the disciplinary action for a deputy if he doesn't turn on his or her body cam, or if they turn it off? What disciplinary action will be handed down to them if you're elected sheriff?
Yeah, absolutely. I will of course be answering question. The answer to your question is it's not going to happen under my watch, and if it does, there'll be severe discipline. You know, it could go up into, it could begin with a day off and end with complete termination and complete firing. But I do want to add a little bit to that, Darryl. When you say we, and I know we use the pronoun we and they a lot, but when you say they brought body cameras, they didn't bring body cameras to BSO. I brought body cameras to BSO. That was something personal that I did. And when you go back to the massacre at Stoneman Douglas and you see footage amongst Broward Sheriff's deputies, and you know, you see a lot of good things that were done, and you see, you know, with former Deputy Peterson, things that were not done that led to his arrest. You know, you have to step, and then you hear the Coral Springs Police Department say we did everything right. Do you really think the Coral Springs Police Department is any more talented than the BSO or the Miramar Police Department or any other? It's the same, you know, it's people from all over coming together to form a police department. There's nothing special in the water that makes Coral Springs any better than anyone else. The reason they said they did everything right is they had no body cameras. They were able to say whatever they wanted. And I know when you don't have body cameras, you don't know what actually happened. I spent a lot of money on them. I bought them. We are going to use them, and there are going to be severe consequences, including up to termination from your position as a deputy if you don't turn the darn camera on.
And I'm not sure if every deputy in Broward County has a body cam. Will you be addressing getting every deputy? Because I think, in my own personal opinion, that I think that every deputy should have a body cam, and if they don't have body cams, will they be getting one in the future under your administration?
You said every deputy. You said every deputy in Broward County. I assume you're referring to BSO, right?
Yes, in Broward County Sheriff's Office.
Yes, thank you. Everyone, the only deputies that will and should not and will never have body cameras are deputies that are working in an undercover capacity. Absent of anyone working in an undercover capacity, trying to sell themselves as a quote unquote bad guy to buy or purchase or do whatever they're going to do, everyone else will and should have a body camera.
Okay. Wayne?
I want to go back down memory lane for a moment, Scott. Back in 2007, I was working for the city of Deerfield, and I remember an incident happened here where we had, and I know this was way before your time, I just want to just get your take on something. We had an incident happen here where, you know, it was a blog going here in Deerfield, and people was writing on the blog, and city officials, it was criticizing city officials, and it happened under Al Lamberti, but they wanted to find out so bad who was writing the blog and who was commenting that they falsified a subpoena doc, I believe it was called.
Subpoena.
Yeah, subpoena. They falsified the subpoena, and they put on the subpoena, because they suspected me and my brother of writing the blog, and they put on there that I was distributing child pornography online. What would you do if a deputy did that and it was claimed by the superiors at the time that it was an oversight, it was a form that was filled out and it was an oversight? If something like that happened under your watch, what would you do?
Are you saying, I want to make sure I'm answering this correctly, are you saying that a deputy filed a false police report and lied about information and it was captured in a sworn document? Is that,
Yes, it
I'm not
was.
familiar with the incident.
Yes, it was an officer there, two
Was it-
officers. I don't quite remember their name. I'm not gonna even.
Jonathan Brown, I believe was one.
I know he interviewed me at that time, but it was another guy. I can't think of his name right now, but they or one of the two, whoever, Joy Vella or Vatella or something, I'm not for sure of the name, but they falsified a document. And at the time, it was a guy there named Dave Benjamin. I went to school with him. We went to middle school together.
Dave Benjamin was eventually arrested and served 5 years in prison. Are you aware of that?
Right, for the embezzler down in Fort Lauderdale.
Not Rothstein.
Yeah,
Rothstein.
yeah, Rothstein. But at the time, I filed the complaint with the sheriff department, and it was dismissed with overwhelming evidence. I remember Elgin Jones and some more reporters did a story on it where it was uncovered that they falsified it. They gave false information to Bell South. Nothing was done here locally. That still burns me up inside here to this day that the city of Deerfield allowed it to go on. And it was an officer here at the time. The executive officer here was named Fernandez. I believe his name was Fernandez. Jay Fernandez, I believe it was.
Jay Fernandez.
Jay Fernandez. But they all claim that it didn't happen at first, that it was an oversight, and none of the deputies were ever disciplined. I even filed an ethics complaint against the state attorney at the time, Peter Nieswinder, I believe his name was. Peter Nieswinder, I believe his name. But the thing is, nothing never happened. It was like covered up. It was covered up. I went and I did everything the right way through internal affairs. And I heard from deputies that came to me privately say, when I filed it, say, just as soon as you got off the phone, they threw it in the garbage can. And I know that wasn't under your watch. It was under Al Lamberti's watch. But as the question I was asking, like I had asked you, and you answered it, if that had happened under your watch, what would happen to those guys?
Well, we would have investigated fully, total transparency, and if they perjured themselves on a legal document or offered a false police report, the case would have been sent over to the state attorney. They would have been severely disciplined, and I would handle business as it should be handled. But in your question, you said when you're talking about the illegal actions that were performed against you. And how hurtful it was. You said it burns me up to hear people say things about you. It isn't true. Well, right now, you have an appointed sheriff who went to take a police application test and said on the test, "I've done LSD." Admitted to it. He was excluded from the process and was not able to become a police officer ever, because of the hallucinogenic properties of LSD and flashbacks and what could happen on the road. 3 or 4 times, as recent as this past January, he lied on applications, did the same thing that was done to you. And this burns me up, and it burns up the men and women of the agency. He talks about integrity. He uses words like honor, and then goes ahead and absolutely forget about the use of LSD and it's the lying, the untruthfulness about his life, about all these things. The community wants him to come clean, and he won't. And you can't be the sheriff if you're not honest. There's a reason why the police union and I have my issues with the police union, but there's a reason why the police union supported another candidate. There's a reason why the largest union at the Broward Sheriff's Office, the FOPE, made up of detention deputies and communication personnel, endorsed me and supports me. There's a reason why the AFL-CIO, with their 56 unions, endorses me. There's a reason why the people in Broward County are endorsing people other than the Republican appointed sheriff. And we need to change that in August. So things that, like what happened to you, don't happen to you.
Yes, and it was very, it was just depressing because I went to every elected official here in Deerfield. None of them did anything. It's like they didn't want to get involved with it, and they knew. I showed from the city manager at that time, a guy named Mike Mahaney, to every commissioner, I showed them the documents. I still have the documents. I'm gonna put them online one of these days and show what they put up there. And they said that it was an oversight. I don't see how you can put distributing child pornography online via Bell South and say that was an oversight.
I'm surprised. I don't know why this ain't the place for it. I'm surprised you didn't take any legal recourse and file suits like have never been filed before. But I'll tell you this, and everyone listening, you'll support me on this. You have my personal phone number. You've called me many times throughout the years. I've called you back every single time. And there's no worrying about the elected officials in Deerfield Beach. They're all great elected officials, and I support them all. But if something goes on from a police or fire perspective, you have my cell phone number, and you'll be calling me directly, and we'll be dealing with it.
Yes, yes. Anything else, Daryl?
I think that's it. We have one last question for you, Scott. So
and then he can give a closing statement.
Well, that would be my closing statement. If you have anything else, you could ask him, and then I'll give him the closing statement. Let him make his closing statement.
No, I don't have anything else. It was just a pleasure talking to you today, Scott. Always been a pleasure over the years talking to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Wayne and Daryl. Thanks for having me on the Adam Brothers podcast. I just have a 10 seconds, 15 seconds. I just want to say that Dr. King we said a lot of great things, but Dr. King said an injustice anywhere is an injustice everywhere. What happened to me, if anybody knows an innocent person who went to jail, or they know somebody charged with something they didn't do, you know what my family and I have gone through. We have a strong relationship with our Lord. We know he put us in. He allowed the devil to take us out, and he'll put us back in. I no doubt in my mind about that. But we do need to right this injustice. It could happen to you. It could happen to anyone else. So I'm asking for everybody to vote for us on August 18th and put us back in office and reclaim the stolen vote.
There you have it, ladies and gentlemen, straight from Scott Israel. He's running for Sheriff of Broward County, Florida. And sir, we wish you the best of luck in being reelected as Sheriff of Broward County, Florida. And thank you for your time. Thank you for stopping by the Adams Brothers podcast. And you're always welcome to come back on here and talk to us, even after you get elected. I know that you are, and you're always welcome to come back. And because most politicians, they get elected and you never see them again after the election. They won't answer their phone. They let the voicemail fill up so you can't call them or leave them a message. We all know the little tricks, but you're always welcome to come back on our show.
I don't subscribe to that. I'm here 4 years before an election and 4 months before an election. It's my community, so I'll be back on. Thank you for having me today.
Scott Israel, thank you for joining us, and have a wonderful evening, sir.
Have a wonderful day.
You too. Take care, gentlemen.